What's up, beautiful world? This is TNA, Top Notch Audio, and welcome to another episode of r/Malicious Compliance. Our first story will be, Hire the Romanian? Are you sure? Followed by, want to talk to the boss? And finally, why don't you get up and present it? Okay, if this is your first time listening, remember to hit that subscribe button on the bottom right hand corner. If this is not your first time, welcome back. Enjoy the stories of r/Malicious Compliance. And this next r/Malicious Compliance story is posted by u/LLKM 1994. Hire the Romanian? Are you sure? First ever post, long-time lurker. This was 5 years ago. The company I used to work for was a metal works company in the southeast of England. It had a 40-strong team of fabricators and fitters. We were hiring for an electrical engineer for some automation that we were branching into. I was also the guy training the engineers in what system they would be using. Me is me, boss, dipstick, boss, European guy, I'll call him Gav for short, supervisor, workshop supervisor. I got word from the supervisor that they had hired a guy and he was from Europe. They warned me to speak slowly and clearly as English wasn't his strong suit. I told them to check his documents to check he can indeed work. I was told to keep my nose out and do my job. When I had spoken to boss, he had a thick folder of pictures of electrical systems that he had built for home automation. I was a bit skeptical at first, especially as some of the pictures had stock photo plastered over them. I asked him to make sure he was sure about this and if he had done the checks to make sure he was allowed to work. I was told the same thing. Keep your nose out of it and do your job. Okay. A month or so goes by and I think he understands how the system works and how it should be used with all of the safety systems in place. So we take him to a site and leave him to do his thing while the rest of the guys get started on fitting security grill and railing all over the site. Me being a sucker, I agreed to help the rest of the team with the fitting and finishing, leaving our new engineer all alone. Big mistake. All power on the site cuts off, generator kicks in, all the lights come on, and we discover smoke coming from the room where the fuse board is. An OF moment has just dawned on everyone. What Gav had decided to do was try and wire in the system to a 3-phase board without checking the board. Standard phase board right next to it. First red flag. This made the situation worse as he somehow blew the entire board up and had to explain to the electrician why he has to install a new board. The second red flag came in the shape of a van filled with immigration officers wanting to speak to Gav about him working when he shouldn't have been. I asked if they had any proof of it being the same guy, and indeed it was. I pulled the boss to one side and told him the immigration officers want to talk to Gav and the boss. I could see the terror in his face and panic in his voice as he said, "Call the new guy in so I can get rid of him fast." I politely reminded him that he should have checked before hiring him. He looked defeated. The immigration officers decide to wait around the corner, and just as Gav walked in, the van pulls in and swoop onto the poor man and slap him in cuffs. The officers then load him into the van and drive off. A few weeks pass by and the boss thinks he is in the clear. A few weeks later, and he has sent a letter telling him to make his way to the nearest home office building. To this day, I still don't know what they said to him as he came back 2 hours later and closed up the workshop and never reopened. But it turns out he is still paying off a massive fine and couldn't afford to reopen. He was later arrested for tax evasion and fraud. Gav and I became friends and the home office helped him become a British citizen with some help that they offered, so he wasn't removed. Edit. Remove the Romanian bit. He might not actually be Romanian. I never bothered asking what nationality he was, not my business. He sounded Romanian and held an EU passport, so I made an assumption. I will know in about 10 to 11 months when he returns to the UK. And this story is posted by u/dark909911. Want to talk to the boss? Cast. Me, my son who is 2, crazy tenant, building owner. Back in 2012 to 2015, I worked as a building supervisor with 7 buildings I took care of. I also had a side job as a contractor to paint any apartment that needed it. I only did this part-time because of other duties for my buildings. If I didn't have time for painting, my employer would hire outside workers. I had been a painter for about 8 years by this time and did a very good job. I wanted everything perfect. At the time, my son was only 2 years old and I had him with me for 2 weeks. I had other building supers who were taking care of my buildings for my 2 weeks off. My boy started talking really early, and by 2, he could speak quite clearly. He didn't make much sense, but you could understand every word he said. I got a call from one of my tenants angrily telling me that I must come to her place to paint her living room. Her grandkids colored all over the walls with Sharpies, and she has company coming and would be totally embarrassed if they saw her walls. I kindly told her I'm on my 2-week vacation and can't help. She started screaming into the phone telling me it's my job and I have to do this or she won't pay rent next month. I told her to call the building owners and explain that to them and that they have 3 other painters on call. That went over like a loud fart in church. Then I told her that my painting and landlord status were 2 separate jobs and I am on a 2-week vacation from both. She hung up and called the building owner. She called me after asking my side. I told her and she just laughed about it and said, if she calls back, just have fun. But she knows better than to threaten holding the rent back because I warned her if she didn't pay, she couldn't stay. I miss that woman. Less than 5 minutes later, I got the call I was expecting from the crazy tenant. She tried telling me the owner said I had to be there by tonight to get it done immediately. I laughed and told her I already talked to Tina, not real name, and AM still on vacation. That's when she said she meant my boss from painting. Oops. Malicious compliance activated. I said he is right here beside me. I'll put you on speaker so we can all straighten this or together. So I put the phone on speaker and told my son he is wanted in the phone. He loved talking on the phone. He didn't listen to you, just tell you all about what's going on with his day. Tell you what he is watching on TV, tell you about the puppy pooping in the grass. She couldn't be rude to a toddler, so after a few minutes of him chatting away, I picked up the phone and took it off speaker. This set my little man into a freak out. I said into the phone, that's my boss. By the sounds of him right now, it doesn't look like I can make it tonight. She just hung up. I didn't get another call from her. I had to call my mom to settle him down again. My mother loves all the kids and would sit on the phone with any of her 10 grandkids for hours and love every second. And this story is posted by you/AT Why don't you get up and present it? Okay. So a few years ago, I did teacher training to teach college and secondary school students, UK, and before that, I went to university and earned a degree in psychology. So when I started my teacher training, I made quite a lot of friends on the course, as well as reconnecting with an old friend who I'm still best friends with now. However, there was a very small knit group on the program that was headed by someone who felt they knew better at everything and diminished other people's teaching subjects. For example, she once said to an English teacher that we won't have any need for English soon. From now on, I'll call her dunce. So one day, we moved on to behaviorism and education, and my lecturer valued my opinion on the subject, so he asked me from time to time in class if I wanted to elaborate, etc. And I thought it was really kind of my lecturer to ask. This irked Dunce, and she loudly stated to everyone that, isn't it all just common sense? Referring to behaviorism and psychology. I explained, no it isn't, and that it opened a lot of different areas, research paths, etc., etc. She laughed and kept repeating it's common sense. I gave up because you argue with stupid. A few weeks passed and we have to give a presentation in groups about different subjects we covered so far. This also coincided with the last day before Christmas break, so everything was more relaxed, etc. I present and finish and sit back at the front of the class next to the presentation screen. Dunce and her group began to present, and Dunce is presenting her portion of the presentation, which happens to be biopsychology and education, an area that is one of my specialties. So I'm listening nicely, and she's speaking and finishes her sentence with, but it's all just common sense anyway, isn't it? And looks directly at me. So rather than back down, I decided to ask her a question about her section of the presentation, and her answer is, I don't know, I don't have my notes with me. To which I respond, but I thought it was common sense. I know it's a running meme on Reddit that everyone claps, but others in the class laughed loudly and clapped. I got on well with everyone. When that subsided, she said with a pissed off face, why don't you get up and present it? So I did. I got up and presented her slides in detail and said thank you and sat down. My lecturer was totally on board with this and was amused herself. And that's the last time dunce questioned anyone else's subject. Those were 3 great stories. To hear the best stories of the week, click on the video in the top left-hand corner. To hear more Reddit stories all related to what you just heard, click on the video in the top right-hand corner. If you have not already done so, click on the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Once again, this is TNA, Top Notch Audio. Thank you for listening and have yourself a great day.